Gwi-ju has a hard time recovering from his broken marriage and keeps spiraling back into the past to understand where he went wrong. On the other hand, Da-hye's mother locks her up in the room after she says she wants to quit her scamming side hustle. She still refuses to believe Mrs. Bok has precognitions, while Mr. Bok struggles to tell his wife how Gwi-ju's ability has evolved, making her his destined soulmate. Meanwhile, Aina continues to get isolated by Hae-rim, and after reading her mind to discover how much she hates her, she loses her glasses and leaves her school. While Gwi-ju was still stuck in his past, Aina ends up at Da-hye's sauna, and her mother tells her to use Aina to resume their attempt to rob the box. However, she wasn't interested in that anymore. Aina wonders if she quit her scheme out of love, but Da-hye dismisses her, and later, after she buys her an intensely expensive pair of glasses, Aina tells her she read her mother's mind, and that the said lady is now testing her loyalty. Right then, Gwi-ju arrives and takes Aina away before turning back to Da-hye and lecturing her about getting her shit together because somebody gave his life to save her from the fire. Just as she leaves, Da-hye finds Gwi-ju from the future, who tells her to stop him right now and warns him that his sister was in trouble. True to his word, back at the gym, Grace pushes Dong-hee off the railing to see if she flies. However, Gwi-ju saves her in the nick of time. They rush her to the hospital where Gwi-ju explains to her how Da-hye helped save her. However, when Mrs. Bok gets there, she harshly slaps Da-hye and makes her leave. Once the Boks return home, Aina calls her father an idiot for still not understanding why Da-hye left him, and he returns to their wedding to realize that she was slapped by her mother for ruining their scheme, which she was forced into from the beginning. Realizing that she loves him, he heads to the sauna and proposes to exchange money for spending more time with Da-hye. Although her mother hops on the bandwagon right away, Da-hye was reluctant and reasons that she has feelings for him, which is why she can't keep her cool around him. However, Gwi-ju was persistent and begins pestering her from then onwards whenever she was in the sauna or on a date with someone else. In fact, after he ruins her potential fourth marriage, they barely outrun the man's psycho wife and laugh it off before deciding to have some dinner together. There, Gwi-ju asks her why she was with the strange people that she's with, but when she doesn't give him a proper answer, he returns to his past the day Da-hye was orphaned. After discovering that her mother adopted her so she could repay her father's debts, Gwi-ju comforted the heartbroken young Da-hye. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bok continues to have premonitions about Da-hye, while her husband spends more time at a dance club with his side chick. One night, however, things go south and the woman's husband catches them and threatens to file a lawsuit against Mr. Bok if he doesn't pay him 2 billion yen. The next day, Gwi-ju takes Da-hye on a date along with her uncle and travels to another town to buy her favorite childhood shaved ice. In that town, he buys her the winning lottery ticket as well, and travels back in time to enjoy the ice cream with her, and also hands her the ticket so she can repay her debts and break free from her adoptive mother. Da-hye, however, hands her this ticket to Mrs. Bok and asks her to keep her son away from her, but eventually, this ticket gets stolen by Mr. Bok, who hands it to the greedy husband, who in turn hands it to Da-hye's mother, who turns out to be the mastermind behind everything. On the other hand, Grace and Dong-hee team up to manipulate her ex-fiancé, Ji-han, into marrying her again, and Aina's phone gets broken by some bullies, after which Da-hye's uncle rescues her and they form a peculiar bond. One night, Gwi-ju asks Da-hye about their family's heirloom, and she reveals that it was given to her by the man who rescued her from the fire, proving that it was Gwi-ju. He also proves his mother's accusations wrong by finding the ring safe and sound in their locker, making Da-hye's ring a double from the past. A few days later, Mrs. Bok receives pictures of her husband dancing with another woman and tells him to leave her house at once. He argues that he did it because his own dream to dance got buried somewhere beneath her greed, but she doesn't budge. As the poor old man leaves, the house ends up in chaos and Da-hye reveals to Gwi-ju that it was her mother's doing. Meanwhile, everyone at school begins to bully Aina, making her run away, and Gwi-ju and Da-hye go looking for her with the help of Da-hye's uncle, who knows a lot more about her than her own father. On their search, Gwi-ju realizes how lonely Aina has been, but they fail to find her until Gwi-ju from the past returns and tells them that she is locked in her school gym. The culprit turns out to be Hae-rim, whose jealousy stems from the school's hottie's crush on Aina. However, just before Aina passes out from the suffocation, Gwi-ju and Da-hye arrive and rescue her, and later, after Aina calms down following a discussion with Da-hye, she finally has a heart-to-heart conversation with Gwi-ju, in which she admits that she's always felt like the reason that ruined both her parents, but Gwi-ju reassures her that she's the best thing that's ever happened to him. Aina eventually tells him about her secret superpower, and he later teaches her how to ride a bike, and Aina's newfound confidence also helps her confess to her crush, and the two start dating. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bok has a premonition about Gwi-ju's death and rushes to her husband's dance club to tell him about it. On the other hand, Gwi-ju finally manages to return the moment Aina was born and tells Da-hye he's going to save her from the fire. Over the next few days, Mrs. Bok reveals her dream to all her family members, excluding Aina, and insists that no matter what they do, they can never prevent her dreams from coming true. What they can do, however, is to make sure Gwi-ju's final days make him as happy as possible. To make sure of this, Da-hye moves back in, and they all spend their time together as a family. Meanwhile, Hae-rim gets what she deserves after getting reprimanded for locking Aina all alone, and she gets isolated by everyone at school. A few days pass, and Gwi-ju begins to sneak into Da-hye's bed at night, and on such nights, she proposes that they go on a trip together. However, on the day of the trip, she sends him back in time, and while he was gone, Da-hye orchestrates a car accident to fake her death in hopes of keeping Gwi-ju from going back in time to save her from the fire and dying in the process. As Gwi-ju's life falls apart over the next few months, Grace helps Dong-hee lose weight and gets ready for her wedding with the greedy Ji-han. However, even after losing so much weight, Dong-hee was unable to fly, and meanwhile, Aina believes that Da-hye wasn't dead and goes to the sauna to investigate. After looking into her uncle's eyes, she discovered the truth and tells Gwi-ju that Da-hye was staying at the beach house, hiding from them. As Gwi-ju heads out to find her, Aina returns home only to learn that she sent her father to his own death. On the other hand, Gwi-ju finds Da-hye and tells her that she cannot leave him just like that, after making him able to sleep, breathe, and walk again. She reveals that she only did it so he wouldn't go back to the past, and the two reconcile with a sweet kiss. Gwi-ju ends up spending the night at the beach house, where to find the cold of the sea, the two cuddle under blankets, and he promises Da-hye that he won't travel back in time until after they've lived a beautiful life together. He meets up with her mother the following day and explains to her that she did not run away from them and only did it so she could save him. The reconciled couple return home to discover that Aina now knows the truth and has locked herself up from the guild. She later opens up to Da-hye about how much of a curse their abilities are, but she talks her out of it and teaches her to embrace herself for who she is. Meanwhile, Ji-han was planning to steal the 50 billion won that Dong-hee was to inherit while he messes around with his other girlfriend. His cheating was captured on camera by Dae-hee, who later threatens Ji-han to pay her 200 million won if she doesn't want these photos to end up in Dong-hee's inbox. While his broadcast manages to arrange this money from various loan sharks, Gwi-ju catches Dong-hee eating in secret one night and tells her she was her most beautiful self when she was younger and happy. He also deduces that her inability to fly doesn't stem from her weight, but rather her unhappiness, the reason behind which is likely her engagement. A few nights later, once Da-hye has received the ransom money from Ji-han, Grace forces Dong-hee to show her their new house, where they catch Ji-han messing around with his side chick. Despite his begging, Dong-hee breaks off their engagement for good, and after he pushes Grace off the building while struggling to snatch the money bag from her, Dong-hee manages to fly as high as she could before and saves her. A few days later, Gwi-ju takes Aina to the zoo where they share some cotton candy, and he reassures her that he isn't going to die and leave her alone. Meanwhile, Da-hye meets up with her mother, who confesses that she loves her like her real child and is glad that she's alive. One evening after watching his parents dance to an old song, Gwi-ju returns in time to find Da-hye. He helps her learn cycling to make sure she isn't bullied by anyone, but in the process, ends up getting the scratch on his neck that Da-hye has mentioned her savior from 13 years ago had, making him wonder if he'll be dead by the time this scar heals. Over the next few days, Gwi-ju hides the scar by wearing a turtleneck, and Aina practices hard for her upcoming dance competition while also trying to convince Hae-rim to join them. On the other hand, Dong-hee's romance blooms with Da-hye's uncle, while Ji-han continues to harass her and threatens her with a video of her flying. One night, Da-hye finds the scar on Gwi-ju's neck, and even though he tries to comfort her, she couldn't help bawling her eyes out. Meanwhile, Mrs. Bok continues to have visions of her son dying from a fire and struggles to cope with it. On the day of Aina's dance competition, both the Bok and the Sauna families show up in style to support their little girl. However, Dong-hee's fun was spoiled when Ji-han threatens to hurt Aina if she doesn't show up to a certain location in her school. She reluctantly gets there only to find he has spread out candles and rose petals to propose to her for marriage. He even threatens to set himself on fire if she doesn't say yes. However, she calls him a coward and leaves. Meanwhile, Hae-rim shows up on Aina's request and the group dances together, much to Gwi-ju and Da-hye's pride. Aina also reconciles with Hae-rim later, and on the other hand, while watching the smoke from the next performance, Mrs. Bok realizes that her dream wasn't a premonition of the past but of the present. She tells her husband that there will be a fire here and they all begin to evacuate, while Da-hye was out to find Aina and Gwi-ju has gone back in the past. True to Mrs. Bok's speculation, Ji-han's little stunts set the school on fire. Da-hye, on the other hand, overcomes her fear of fire and saves Aina and finds her just before the two of them suffocate. However, their misery hasn't ended yet since the wall behind them begins to collapse, and right then, Gwi-ju arrives and holds the wall while Da-hye gets Aina to safety. Moments before he dies too, Gwi-ju returns in time and saves young Da-hye from the fire, only to really lose his life while shielding her. 5 years pass and the family commemorates Gwi-ju's death while Da-hye plays around with their child, Nu-ri, and it turns out that her son can go back in time and bring things back from the past. Intrigued by this, Da-hye asks him to bring his father back as a joke, only for him to do so in reality. With Gwi-ju finally back, the family reunites and they all have lunch together. This is where Da-hye and Gwi-ju's rocky relationship ends. Leave a comment down below to let us know which story you'd like to see next. Also, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you guys on the next video.